it's great that you have time right after your concert.
Oh, thank
it was
you.
a great concert, and the biggest surprise for me was the Walrus. Is it really from Chopin?
What's that?
I'm the Walrus?
No, it's not.
No, it's just from the Beatles.
Same notes, just in different places. Yeah.
Okay, but the same notes?
No.
No,
Really.
not really. Okay.
Well, there's only 88, so I'm sure somewhere. But I just thought, because I was in Hamburg the other day and I went to go see, I didn't realize that they had spent so much time there.
Yes, I
And
started.
was like, oh, I should do a Beatles song, you know?
Okay.
Yeah. So
And it's great. That's one. I love this song, and it's one of my first things when I get in touch with music. When I was 10 or 12 years
Beatles.
old, yes, the Beatles, and exactly this song.
Really?
This was something from a very young age. It was great, fantastic. I was smiling the whole song.
It's so funny you bring that up, because that's the case with the Chopin stuff too. To where I get emails all the time. It's just like hearing this reminded me what it was like to be a child and take piano lessons. Or I would go to bed at night and I would hear my father playing piano downstairs. So music has this thing of like bringing back our childhood almost, you know? It's really interesting.
Yes.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
For me, it's I love music, and for me, the melody counts more than some text or something. It's emotion that you can only transport with music.
Yeah.
So I think you don't need a text sometimes, but it's also great to hear the classical music. I think it's something you have to hear live.
Sure. Yeah. It helps a lot. And see, you know.
Yes, for me, I close my eyes a lot of times just to listen. But if you got an orchestra, it's also that you have to see it. It's something very different. And you said that you do your music for the generation Spotify. What does it mean?
Sure, I'm glad you asked. We have a very young generation now, where music is on their phone. And we are beginning to lose the idea that music is pop, music is rock, music is jazz, music is classical. So we used to have, well, we're seeing again, but there used to be a record store, and you would walk into the record store and you would say, I like pop. And you would go and you would look and you would get it, and then you would leave. You would never go over and say, well, I don't know, what's in this over here? But now, with streaming services, with Spotify and Deezer and iTunes, we now have playlists according to our moods and how we feel and what kind of day we're having, you know? And so it's no longer about genre, it's no longer about, you know, the person that's singing Adele, she likes Adele because it's Adele. She doesn't care what genre or label it is. And I think we're beginning to even see that now with classical music, to where when people are listening to music, you know, like there's a song on, I've got a song on Spotify that's on a really nice playlist, and I don't think that people care that it's a classical, quote unquote. It's just a nice song that they like. And I think we're beginning to see that with Spotify, which is just like, either they like it or they don't, and they move on. And I think it's amazing because we're now beginning to see where genres are kind of falling away. And it's either music that you enjoy or music that you don't enjoy. You know, I think it's amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. So you got all the music you can choose from.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that, you know, I know for the listener, it's the best thing you could ask for, because you can now explore, and you're almost encouraged to be like, well, what other artists have I not heard of? And so I'm beginning to see my music on the same playlist as Bon Iver to, you know, Chopin or Mozart or whatever, But then other artists that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I want to go check them out. I want to hear who they are. And now I have found a new band that I'm just like, I never heard this before. This is great. And so for the listener, it's an amazing time. It's an amazing time. So yeah.
I've listened to a few Chopin pieces in the original version before I came here, and to compare it with your version, and it's really that it sounds more modern. Mm-hmm. It sounds more like music for this time, and not for history time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you do this?
So I went through and I made photocopies of the music, and then I began to write the chords. And the music that we listen to today is going to influence the music that we write today, just because that's what we're surrounded by. From the clothes that we wear to what we drive, we are influenced from today, right now. And so that is going to apply into every step of our lives, from when we eat, from what we read or watch on TV. And the same thing with music. So with music, you can have elements where right now, what I tend to listen to is really strong melodies. And so with Chopin, he has these really strong melodies. And I went through and I said, well, what if I put a different chord underneath that melody? And so instead of it being, something that's really rather dated, if you will, which is great, it's okay. But instead of this, well, what if I went, I only changed one chord, but it changed the entire tone of the song. And so it's almost like it's still very familiar, because we all want to be able to associate and be familiar with something, but it's also very new towards like, oh, I thought I knew that song. So yeah, it's trying to put a new spin on things, but still be very respectful to the original piece. Yeah.
Do you think it's necessary for classical music to change, to get to the actual time? And
I do. And I think what happens with that, I was surprised how I did not really receive much negative press with the Chopin or with the Bach. What surprised me the most were the emails saying, I've never listened to Chopin before. Now I'm really curious. I actually want to go and listen to the original piece, just like you did, and see. And so all of a sudden, we now have a new interest in something that they would not have listened to in the first place. So now they're curious about Chopin. Well, who else was around then? And so now you're getting to the point where we're losing this idea that we have to stay in this structure. And I think that's been so rewarding. And I think that's what's gonna push classical music forward. Is to where you have this new audience now. Oh, maybe I'll start taking piano lessons. Maybe I'll start playing an instrument, because that sounds like it's a really nice piece, So it's exposure. It's exposure. Things grow with exposure. And so if we have exposure towards classical music, then people are going to be listening to it. They're going to be attending it live, and then they're going to, start learning instruments or start playing. And that is what it all matters in order for it to continue down the road. Because otherwise, it's just going to die off. It is. I mean, anything that doesn't change eventually, falls apart for the most part.
Let's talk about Bach. The music seems such an influence for modern music and modern artists. Don't know if you know the Flying Steps.
I don't.
The Flying Steps is a breakdance crew from Berlin,
okay,
which make a show called Flying Bach.
Okay, what?
With Bach music and breakdance.
Wow.
And they are going all around the world, and they are
I'm gonna check this out. This is awesome.
Really great. You can find it on YouTube.
Yeah,
It's called Flying Bach. It's from something you can drink from Austria.
It's
they
a
made
beer.
it. But it's really great, and they are really great dancers. And Bach seems like something which is...
Sure. Well, okay, so...
What is special about it?
I'm glad you bring that up. So, Bach has a structure to it, to where it's so strong, you can really mess with it, and it still be great. When Bach was teaching, story has it, that he would have his students take his pieces and say, do something with it. Take this piece and then change it. Mess it up. Let's see what happens with it. And so there's a sense of let's paint and not worry where the paint goes, but we know that we kind of stay on this one canvas, we stay in this area. And so with Bach's music, it has a really, I don't want to say simple, but that's what makes it so difficult, is that it is so simple. You know, those chords, what can you do with just 2 or 3 really simple chords? Like with some people, they want to like do all of this stuff and all of this noise and everything, and there's so much. But what if you took all of that away and said, you know what, you can only paint in this little bitty box, now create. And you find yourself when in a position where like, okay, this is all I have, how do I make this really creative? So going back to you have, what do I do with this? So I don't mean to go off on this, but with Bach, there is this structure that even if you decide to break out of the mode a little bit, the foundation is still going to be there. And I think that we find how Bach's music continues into today's music because it is simple and it allows the ear to listen. If you look at most pop songs, and if you analyze, like a Bach variation, sometimes they're very, very, very similar because his idea was to keep it very simple. The chorales, they're church pieces. They were meant to be sung in a church, right? So he wanted these pieces to be simple, but then he was like, how do I make only 4 voices beautiful? And it's the most challenging thing. I don't know how he did it. It's just mind-boggling. It's like you only get 4 voices. Let's imagine you only had 4 fingers to play with on the piano. What could you do with those 4 fingers? And I think a lot of people would be like, I don't know. But he was just brilliant with it. I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think there's something so unique about his music that you just have to be drawn to it. You just have to be like, that's amazing, I don't know. So, and the funny thing is we wouldn't have known about it unless Mendelssohn would have found his music. That's what's mind-boggling. Mendelssohn was going through some stacks of old music and is like, who is this Bach guy? What is this all about? He had been buried for, a really long time and no one had heard of his stuff. And then he finds it, and now it's changed everything.
So I think that's all I have.
Sorry I rambled so much.
No, that's absolutely great. And say thank you for your time, for your music.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. Now,